that spotlight is also burning on the Boston Bruins, who it feels like they're living in deja vu. They're basically going through what they went through last year against the Florida Panthers in the first round. Can you describe as best as you can what the mood has been like around this team, from the media, from the fan standpoint, even from the players and head coach Jim Montgomery?
It's been weird is the best way I can put it, Julian. Like I've covered a lot of the Leafs over the years, right? I live in Toronto. In my old role, I used to kind of be a beat writer, essentially covering that team. So, I'm used to teams kind of having to deal with the idea of demons or things that happened in the past, like getting those kind of questions. I'm not used to seeing it asked of a Leafs opponent, especially when they're up in a series. And, when we were at TD for game 5, like I noticed that, they lose a 2-1 game in overtime. Granted, the Bruins stunk the first period. They were brutal in that game. And so, it's an elimination game without the opponent missing their top center. And you come out and have 2 shots in the entire first period against a rookie goaltender or an inexperienced goaltender. I can understand in a sense why the heat got turned up on them, but it was almost like everybody was saying, here we go again. And it's like, they only lost the 1 game. It's like they still have 2 more potential closeout opportunities. They're definitely dealing with the weight of last season. It's hard to measure to the degree that the players feel it. I mean, certainly they don't appreciate the questions. You can sense that they're giving different answers. Brad Marchand at one point in the series was saying, we're in the moment. We're not even thinking about that. And then Jim Montgomery before game 6 was like, oh yeah, we talked about it yesterday. We've moved past that. We've grown through it. Like it just feels that they're not quite sure how to manage that. And, quite frankly, Jim Montgomery might be coaching for his job in game 7. I don't think that's, it's crazy to say because he's only his second season in Boston, and the first one they set a NHL record for regular season performance. But, they could be the first team ever in any of the North American professional sports to blow 3-1 leads in consecutive springs. And, certainly Montgomery's faced at some pointed questions from the Bruins media about, decision to switch up a game 5 lineup after, 2 pretty dominant performances and 2 wins in Toronto. You know, I don't think you can question his goaltending decisions, switching away from the alternating goalies to Swayman, even with them losing the last 2 games, as I say, I don't think you can pin those on Swayman, but they're all going to have to stare that in the mirror. And the sort of rule of thumb is you would always want to play game 7 on home ice. I mean, it might be kind of a weird environment because they lost that game 7 to Florida on home ice last year. They're actually leading into the final 2 minutes and gave up a late goal in regulation and then lost in overtime. And I just feel like there's going to be a little bit of uncertainty in the air. There's certainly going to be more questions before the puck's dropped on the game, as they get home to the Boston media on Friday and asking about those demons. And so it's funny, 2 teams really that kind of carry some ghosts. And I know obviously the game's played with the current players. But there is, sometimes that external conversation finds its way in the walls a little bit, right? It might actually plant a seed of doubt. And the Leafs, I will say, have seized on this right from the moment they went down 3-1. I mean, they put out a video, where they award their player of the game. And Ryan Reeves said it in the dressing room in game 5 is like, we planted the seed. Let's go home and water it. Something to that effect. Now I'm sure Toronto feels, they're going into game 7 with momentum. Momentum doesn't always carry from game to game, but I think it's 2 vastly different feelings for the teams entering that game. And Boston laid another stinker in the first period of game 6. And so if they only play part of the game, or if the Leafs are able to sort of seize in the early stages of game 7, I mean, the momentum that I think of that's usually worked in the Bruins' favor at the game 7s I've been to could turn against them. And so it's, this is compelling. I mean, one way or another, either the Leafs are going to have a 4th season in the last 12 years end on game 7 in Boston, or the Bruins are going to become the first team ever to blow back-to-back 3-1 series leads. I mean, we're guaranteed to see something you don't see a lot of, or doesn't happen. It's not what you expect to happen. And it's going to be a memorable game. That's the thing about game 7s. You usually remember them because even if you have a long career, you only get to so many. I mean, it's just a real special vibe. And I'm kind of stunned that I'm packing today because I'll tell you, I was thinking when I went down for game 5, it felt like the air was out of the balloon for the Leafs. And so just goes to show nothing's over till it's over. And maybe there's a lesson there even for a veteran sports writer about how to approach covering these things.
Last Leafs Bruins question before we get to some other news and notes around the league. Are you ready to eat your words if the Leafs win I mean, I'm gonna have to eat some of that too, but are you ready for the phone to blow up if the Leafs win game 7?
Absolutely. I think you walk through the front door, as I say, you own your stuff, and um, you know, I counted them out essentially. I mean, I did put a caveat in the story. I said unless there's an unlikely or unexpected comeback in the offing here, I mean, this is kind of the end of the Leafs as we know them. I actually stand by that thinking. It didn't feel like they had a comeback in them. It didn't look like the circumstances were in their favor. And I do think if they had a lost game 5 on Tuesday, it would be a pretty monumental moment for the organization of soul searching, and there would certainly be fallout. I don't know how much that changes if they lose a game 7 now. I mean, certainly they've shown a lot of fight to push it to this point and to win the games without Matthews, to kind of win the games in the manner they have. I mean, those are 2 grinding playoff wins. I mean, I saw a few people commenting like, if you don't have a horse in this fight, this is tough hockey to watch. I mean, because the teams really, they're not trading chances. You're seeing players eat pucks. It's a battle out there. It's a slog. It's what I think of when I think of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Quite frankly, it's really hard to win these games, and the Leafs have pulled out 2 sort of by the narrowest of margins. So I will 1,000% eat my words. I'll own my shit. If they win, and look at, even if they end up losing, I mean, they could lose in overtime and play great. Maybe to some degree, I should still be eating my words because, I was judging them based on what I'd seen through 5 games, and the picture or 4 games, I guess, at the time. And the picture does look a little different here through 6, and probably going to look a little different one way or another after Saturday night's final buzzer sounds.